The Bible in a Year, Day 93, 1 Samuel 13 through 15. Saul was very old when he became king, and he reigned 2 years over Israel. Saul chose 3,000 of Israel, of whom 2,000 remained with him in Michmash and in the hill country of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. He sent the rest of the army back to their tents. Now Jonathan struck the Philistine garrison in Gibeah, and the Philistines got word of it. Then Saul sounded the horn throughout the land, saying, "Let the Hebrews hear." Then all Israel heard the report. Saul has struck the garrison of the Philistines. Israel had become odious to the Philistines. Then the army was called up to Saul in Gilgal. The Philistines also assembled for battle against Israel, with 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and foot soldiers, as numerous as the sand on the seashore. They came up and encamped in Michmash, east of Beth Aven. When the soldiers saw that they were in danger because the army was hard pressed, they hid themselves in caves, thickets, rocks, caverns, and cisterns. Other Hebrews crossed the Jordan into the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul, however, held out in Gilgal, all the army trembling in fear behind him. He waited 7 days until the appointed time Samuel had set, but Samuel did not come, and the army deserted Saul. He then said, "Bring me the burnt offerings and communion offerings." Then he sacrificed the burnt offerings. As he finished sacrificing the burnt offering, there came Samuel. So Saul went out toward him in order to greet him. Samuel asked him, "What have you done?" Saul explained, "When I saw that the army was deserting me, and you did not come on the appointed day, and the Philistines were assembling at Michmash, I said to myself, 'Now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not yet sought the Lord's blessing.' So I thought I should sacrifice the burnt offering." Samuel replied to Saul, "You have acted foolishly. You have not kept the command of the Lord your God gave you. The Lord would now establish your kingship in Israel forever, but now your kingship shall not endure. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart to appoint as ruler over his people, because you did not observe what the Lord commanded you." Then Samuel set out from Gilgal and went his own way, but what was left of the army went up after Saul met the soldiers, going from Gilgal to Gibeah of Benjamin. Saul then counted the soldiers he had with him, about 600. Saul, his son Jonathan, and the soldiers they had with them were now occupying Gibeah of Benjamin, and the Philistines were encamped at Michmash. Meanwhile, raiders left the camp of the Philistines in 3 bands. One band took the Ophrah road toward the district of Shual, another turned in the direction of Beth Horon, and the third took the road of Gibeah that overlooks the valley of the Hyenas toward the desert. Not a single smith was found anywhere in Israel, for the Philistines had said, "Otherwise the Hebrews will make swords or spears." All Israel therefore had to go down to the Philistines to sharpen their plowshares, mattocks, axes, and sickles. The price for the plowshares, the mattocks, was 2/3 of a shekel, and 1/3 of a shekel for sharpening the axes for setting the ox goads. And on the day of the battle, neither sword nor spear could be found in the hand of any of the soldiers with Saul or Jonathan. Only Saul and his son Jonathan had them. An outpost of the Philistines had pushed forward to the pass of Michmash. One day Jonathan, son of Saul, said to his armor-bearer, "Come, let us go over to the Philistine outpost on the other side." But he did not inform his father. Saul was sitting under the pomegranate tree in Migron on the outskirts of Gibeah. With him were about 600 men. Ahijah, son of Ahitub, brother of Ichabod, the son of Phinehas, son of Eli, the priest of the Lord at Shiloh, was wearing the ephod. Nor did the soldiers know that Jonathan had gone, flanking the ravine through which Jonathan intended to cross to the Philistine outpost, where the rocky crags on each side, one named Bozez and the other Seneh, one crag to the north toward Michmash, the other to the south toward Geba. Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Come, let us go over to that outpost of the uncircumcised, because the Lord will help us. Because it is no more difficult for the Lord to grant victory by means of a few than if it is means of many." His armor-bearer replied, "Do whatever you think best. I am with you in whatever you decide." Jonathan continued, "When we cross over to those men, we will be visible to them. If they say to us, 'Stay there until we come to you,' we will stop where we are. We will not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' we will go up, because the Lord has delivered them into your hand. That will be our sign." When the two of them came into the view of the Philistine outpost, the Philistines remarked, "Look, some Hebrews are coming out of the holes where they have been hiding." The men of the outpost called to Jonathan and his armor-bearer. "Come up here," they said, "and we will teach you a lesson." So Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Climb up after me, for the Lord has delivered them into the hand of Israel." Jonathan clambered up with his armor-bearer behind him. As the Philistines fell before Jonathan, his armor-bearer, who followed him, would finish them off. In this first attack, Jonathan and his armor-bearer killed about 20 men with half of a furlong. The terror spread through the camp and the countryside. All the soldiers in the outpost and in the raiding parties shuddered in terror. The earth shook with an awesome shuddering. Saul's sentinels in Gibeah of Benjamin saw that the enemy camp had scattered and were running in all directions. Saul said to those around him, "Count the troops and find out if any of us are missing." When they had taken the count, they found Jonathan and his armor-bearer were missing. Saul then said to Ahijah, "Bring the ephod here." Ahijah was wearing the ephod before the Israelites at that time. While Saul was speaking to the priest, the uproar in the Philistine camp kept increasing. So he said to the priest, "Withdraw your hand." And Saul and all his men rallied and rushed into the fight, where the Philistines, wholly confused, were thrusting swords at one another. The Hebrews who had previously sided with the Philistines had gone up with them to their camp, turned to join the Israelites under Saul and Jonathan. Likewise, all the Israelites who were hiding in the hill country of Ephraim, hearing that the Philistines were fleeing, kept after them in battle. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day. The battle continued past Beth-Ava. Even though the Israelites were exhausted that day, Saul laid an oath on them, saying, "Cursed be the one who takes food before evening, before I am able to avenge myself on my enemies." So none of the people tasted food. Now there was a honeycomb lying on the ground, and when the soldiers came to the comb, the honey was flowing, yet no one raised a hand from it to his mouth, because the people feared the oath. Jonathan, who had not heard that his father had put the people under the oath, thrust out the end of his staff he was holding and dipped it into the honeycomb. When he raised it to his mouth and his eyes brightened at this, one of the soldiers spoke up. Your father put the people under a strict oath, saying, Cursed be the one who takes food today. As a result, the people are weakened. Jonathan replied, My father brings trouble to the land. Look how bright my eyes are because I had this little taste of honey. What is more, if the army had eaten freely of the enemy's plunder when they came across it today, surely the slaughter of the Philistines would have been the greater by now. After the Philistines were routed that day from Michmash to Ajalon, the people were completely exhausted, so the army pounced upon the plunder. They took sheep, oxen, and calves, slaughtering them on both ground and eating the meat with the blood in it. Informed that the army was sinning against the Lord by eating meat with blood in it, Saul said, You have broken faith. Roll a large stone here for me, he continued. Mingle with the people and tell each of them, Bring an ox or sheep to me. Slaughter them here and eat them, but you must not sin against the Lord by eating meat with blood in it. So that night they all brought whatever oxen they had seized, and they slaughtered them there. And Saul built an altar to the Lord. This was the first time he built an altar to the Lord. Then Saul said, Let us go down in pursuit of the Philistines by night, to plunder them until daybreak, and leave no one alive. They replied, Do what you think best. But the priest said, Let us consult God. So Saul inquired of God, Shall I go down in pursuit of the Philistines? Will you deliver them into the hand of Israel? But he received no answer on this occasion. All officers of the army, Saul announced, Come forward, find out how this sin was committed today. As the Lord lives, who has given victory to Israel, even if my son Jonathan has committed it, he shall surely die. But none of the people answered him. So he said to all Israel, Stand on one side, and my son Jonathan and I will stand on the other. The people responded, Do what you think best. And Saul said to the Lord, the God of Israel, Why did you not answer your servant this time? If the blame for this resides in me or in my son Jonathan, Lord God of Israel, respond with Urim. But if the guilt is in your people Israel, respond with Thummim. Jonathan and Saul were designated, and the people went free. Saul then said, Cast lots between me and my son Jonathan. And Jonathan was designated. Saul said to Jonathan, Tell me what you have done. Jonathan replied, I only tasted a little honey from the end of the staff I am holding. Am I to die for this? Saul declared, May God do thus to me and more if you do not indeed die, Jonathan. But the soldiers protested to Saul, Is Jonathan to die, the man who won a great victory in Israel? This must not be. As the Lord lives, not a single hair of his head shall fall to the ground, for God was with him in what he did today. Thus the soldiers rescued Jonathan, and he did not die. After that, Saul gave up the pursuit of the Philistines, who returned to their own territory. After taking possession of the kingship over Israel, Saul waged war on the enemies all around Moab, the Ammonites, Edom, the kings of Zobah, and the Philistines. Wherever he turned, he was successful. He fought bravely. He defeated Amalek and delivered Israel from the hand of those who were plundering them. The sons of Saul were Jonathan, Ishvi, and Malchishua. The name of his firstborn daughter was Merab. The name of the younger was Michal. The name of Saul's wife was Ahinoam, daughter of Ahimaaz. The name of his general was Abner, son of Ner, Saul's uncle Kish. Saul's father and Ner, Abner's father, were sons of Abiel. There was heavy fighting with the Philistines during Saul's lifetime. Whenever Saul saw any strong or brave, he took him into his service.